The reports of the death of American manufacturing, I can report, are greatly exaggerated. After, well, really most of my lifetime hearing about the decline of the American manufacturing sector, I was surprised a couple of years ago when I did the basic research and discovered that the largest manufacturing economy in the world is right here in the United States. But that economy is changing very rapidly. It still can be a source of good jobs, good pay, but we have to approach it entirely differently if we're going to have it continue to be a powerful engine of the American economy in years to come. In some cases, this renaissance of American manufacturing is being fueled by new technology, more creative venture capital, and the concentration of creative talent in American cities. I talked earlier about micro-manufacturing that's turning certain parts of New York City into what's now called Silicon Alley. And even out here in the towns and cities of the Great Plains, where people are now talking about envisioning the Silicon Prairie. There's also a rebound in traditional types of manufacturing that would be more familiar to all of us. This too is being fueled by greater technology, which in turn creates greater efficiency and allows American manufacturers to remain competitive even with low-wage manufacturing economies. Our improved energy efficiency and the falling cost of domestically produced sources of energy also is contributing to the ability of our factories to produce competitive products of high quality and low cost, and to ship them around the world. Cities have an enormous role to play in expanding on this rise of our vital manufacturing base. By being the kinds of places that attract and hold on to human talent and innovation, by creatively approaching zoning issues, and by encouraging the investment partnerships that bring all these forces together, cities can be the catalyst for a new rise of urban manufacturing. To shed some light on this extremely important issue, I'd like to introduce our next panel. From New York City, please welcome Miquela Craytor. She's the Vice President of Industrial Initiatives for the New York City Economic Development Corporation. Closer to home, from Johnson County, Kansas, Ed Eilert, Chairman of the Johnson County Government. Mayor Dewey Bartlett of Tulsa, Oklahoma is with us. And from the Ford Motor Company, Tony Reinhart, Director of Government Relations, Ford Motor. Our panel chair needs no introduction. He's our host for this event, Kansas City Mayor Sly James.
Good morning. It's great to see so many of you back again today. We have a very lively day to conclude City Age, and we have a great panel here to talk about an important subject, particularly as it relates to the economic and fiscal health of cities and other regions. I'm going to start with a question that's troubled me and that I hear all the time, and it's basically I keep hearing that U.S. manufacturing is dead or dying and can't do it here, got to go someplace else. Let's take it to China, Taiwan, South America, where labor costs are better and the costs of manufacturing goods is better and all sorts of other reasons. So I'm going to simply ask our panel, and I'll start with my left down with Tony, is that true? And if so, why?
Well, I surely hope not. I still need a few more years to get to retirement, and I have a couple of young ladies in college that wouldn't like to hear that. But the reality is we don't believe so. Ford Motor Company, I think, is proving that you can continue to manufacture in the United States. We are actually now insourcing jobs. It's not easy to make that model work. There's a lot of challenges that go into making those decisions, making those investments. We've gone through that just recently here in Kansas City. I'll be glad to talk about that a little bit more later on. You know, we're investing $1.1 billion, redoing our facility to bring a new product in adding an integrated stamping facility. And I don't think we're the only ones doing this. It's not just the auto industry. We're now having, I've heard of Element TV. They're making TVs in the United States. It's challenging to make the business model work, but it can be done, and I think it will be done for some time to come.
Mayor Bartlett, how about from the city's perspective, the perspective of the mayor of Tulsa, Oklahoma?
Well, you know, it varies a lot from city to city because each city has its strengths and weaknesses, and some cities don't necessarily focus on manufacturing or to a large degree. We do in Tulsa. It is not a dying industry. As a matter of fact, we see it as a great advantage. We have 2 or 3 very prolific industries in Tulsa: aerospace, aviation, and many things related to energy, production of energy, et cetera. Those are our strengths, and so we focus on our strengths very well. And we've had a long history of manufacturing in energy especially. We have 20,000 people employed today, directly employed in that industry, second only to Houston, Texas. So we build upon that, and we're seeing that as a very real strength where there's a huge demand for those kind of experienced people. Where we see a need is in the education side of things, Mayor, where we have people that would like to have a job and are looking for jobs, but they don't have the education capability or the skill set yet to join the workforce.
Thank you. Well, Ed Eilert from Johnson County. When I think of Johnson County, I don't generally think of manufacturing. And that may simply be ignorance on my part, so educate me.
No, it's not ignorance. I think most people, to set Johnson County, we are the second largest county in the Kansas City metro area on the Kansas side of state line. We are the stereotypical suburban county. We have 21 cities in our county. But we also have a large manufacturing presence, not heavy manufacturing, but names like Garmin International, Honeywell International, a company like Gill Studios. If you've ever put up a political sign anywhere in the country, Gill Studios probably manufactured that political sign.
Nobody here has ever done that.
Never done that. Williams Food, which manufactures all kinds of seasoning for food products and shipped nationally and internationally. 22,000 jobs in Johnson County related to manufacturing. Manufacturing, I think, will continue to flourish perhaps in a different way than what our fathers or grandfathers experienced. And in Johnson County, we are benefiting from an 1/8 of a cent sales tax that was passed in 2008 to support 3 educational institutions: K-State, who does research and offer degree programs in animal health and food safety, KU Clinical Trials Center, which offers clinical trials, pharmaceutical trials in the area of Alzheimer's, as well as a very, very large oncology presence, cancer research, supported by degree programs offered by KU Edwards campus. All 3 of those facilities are new or expanded as a result of that 1/8 cent sales tax. We think there's some great manufacturing opportunities in the area of bioscience.
Miquela, first of all, welcome to Kansas City.
Thank you.
And secondly, from your perspective in the economic development sector in New York City, what's your view of manufacturing right now and its importance to cities?
Well, it's an exciting time. I mean, first of all, the Bloomberg administration has now been known for supporting a lot of the industrial sector. And New York City used to be, and back in its heyday, like many of the other cities across our great nation, were known for manufacturing. And what's exciting is that there's this a new appetite, a new excitement around it. Younger people are excited to think about what can be done, and there's this amazing emergence between technology and manufacturing to make it more competitive. And that's really what's been going on in New York City. Is we have recently performed a few studies to assess what are rapid prototyping facilities, what do they represent in terms of the whole ecosystem of manufacturing. We've also done some assessment to understand that manufacturers today actually do not necessarily need, at least in New York, the same amount of square footage for a building. So we've started to try to tackle what are the impediments to businesses surviving in New York City, and what can we as an economic development corporation try to do to get out of that way, or their way rather, and create policies or programs to support the growth and to really meet the reality of today's manufacturing company that needs technology, needs a smaller footprint of building, and make that building more appropriate for their use.
Thank you. Once again, I want to remind you that we're here to not only talk, but to talk with you and have a conversation. So if you have questions, and I will do my best to spot them, but if you have questions, it would be helpful if you could stand or somehow draw attention, and we will try to get to them. When you have questions, if you could make them like relatively questions, you know, like with a question mark at the end of maybe 1 or 2 sentences, that would be really cool. So, you know, this is about new American manufacturing in the new American city. I'm not sure that I understand what is new about manufacturing versus the old manufacturing. Who can enlighten me?
Well, in our case, Mayor, we have an energy sector that obviously has been around for a long time. But energy is not just the production of oil and natural gas. It's looking at the realities of what the market is demanding now, both in an environmental concern as well as a cost savings concern. Compressed natural gas is a good example of that. We in Tulsa, because we understand energy so well, we also understand the need to supply a product that can be environmentally correct, can be inexpensive compared to the other concerns, gasoline, diesel fuel. And so CNG has become, in the past 10 years, a very, very productive part of our economy. That's a new part of a manufacturing process in an age, not, I wouldn't say aging, but in a prolific economy, but it's been here for a long, long time. So a new trend. I put 20 solar panels on the building on the roof of my building about 5 years ago, and I wanted to find out what that whole process was like, because anybody that's involved with energy understands that entirety of that concept of energy, how it's defined. So we all must have certainly a view on what is necessary, but also what's the right thing to do.
Tony, the Ford has been manufacturing for a long time, so certainly.
I guess we must be old manufacturers.
Yes.
By definition.
As exemplified by the representative that they sent. Tony reminded me this is like the second panel we've appeared on together in the last month or so, so it's teasing time. But considering how advanced things are now and what's going on in your industry, you've also got to have examples or be an example of new manufacturing to some extent.
Well,
in what ways?
Well, let's be honest. First of all, let's talk about manufacturing just real quickly. Manufacturing is one of the best ways to create wealth in your economy, create wealth in your community. Mm-hmm. These days, there's a lot of buzzwords, right, because we want to reinvent it. There's urban manufacturing, right, which is in the old days would have been more like textile or artisans, those type of things. There is also advanced manufacturing, or there is light industrial, light, manufacturing. There's a number of different things. The reality is, the important part is that you need people that are making things, right? That's the best way to create wealth. But you have to evolve, and that's where if part of the industry is not evolving, that's where they have died off. In our case, we've had to evolve. We've been in Kansas City. We've been a company for more than 100 years. We're celebrating 100 years of manufacturing here in Kansas City. We started just over the hill down here on Winchester. In 1954, we moved up to where we're at. There was nobody around us. You know, when we talk about urban manufacturing, urban came to us, right? They came and surrounded us. But we've had to evolve. We don't have as many people there as we used to have. We have robotics, we have technology. It's not enough to come to us anymore with a strong back and a will to work, right? You have to come there with certain skill sets, certain abilities to perform in the manufacturing environment. You also look at the products, not just the vehicle itself, but the technologies they're going to, the different types of fuels that we're looking at with the electric vehicles or natural gas or propane or ethanol or whatever it might be. The industry, whatever it is in manufacturing, whether it's urban, light, heavy, advanced, new, it has to be able to evolve and keep up with the evolution of manufacturing.
Miquela, I bet you $1 that when you're working with a manufacturer that you may be either trying to maintain in the area or they're looking at the area, that one of the issues that comes up may be workforce. Do you have a workforce that can support the manufacturing endeavor? How important is that to the people that you're talking to, and what are you finding out about the workforce that's out there now for the manufacturer?
It's a big issue, actually, because more and more companies have upgraded their systems, incorporated various forms of technology. They're looking for people who know how to use this equipment. They're looking for computer numerically controlled machinists. I hear this all the time. They say, the manufacturers tell me, I can't find a good workforce. They don't have technical schools in New York anymore. Where's the vocational schools? So one of the big objectives that the administration has, and one of the efforts that my team has put together, is trying to connect businesses to the right talent. So we've recently started a CNC training for individuals looking to upgrade their skills or just get those skills through our partner agency, the Small Business Services group. And then we also have been giving training dollars to businesses so that they can train up their workers, so that we can create a pipeline of talent, so we can train up and then fill in for lower skill, the entry level, with other folks who may not have those skills off the shelf. But it's a big issue, and one of the bigger concerns is, as we have an aging population, what are we doing to make sure that the next entry of students coming out of high school are thinking about these jobs? Because oftentimes, you know, the younger folks, they're only interested in, you know, working in a commercial building. They don't really think of a machining shop as something that's dirty and wrong, and they just don't want anything to do with it. We're trying to make it exciting again and really trying to incorporate that into schools. And one of the best ways we've been able to do that is through another program where we're taking kids to different facilities like 3D printers. There's one in New York City called MakerBot that's quite big. Bringing that sort of technology into the classroom is a way for kids to get their hands busy and dirty and think more about systems, and I think that's one way to make sure that we get that pipeline of talent, but it's a real issue.
Ed, how about in Johnson County? Are you guys addressing this at the county level in some way?
Workforce development, I think, is a critical element as we think about new manufacturing opportunities. Fortunately, our taxpayers in our county have invested in all kinds of educational opportunities for decades and decades. K through 12, we have a community college which is about 40 years old, has an enrollment of over 30,000 full-time as well as part-time students relearning old skills or developing new skills. We have 2 state universities. One's about 30 minutes away, KU in Lawrence. The other's about 2 hours away, Manhattan, K-State. We worked years to bring the presence of those 2 state universities to our county. And we now have the synergies of their facilities, their opportunities, as well as private and other state universities who have a presence in our county. And I think going forward, that those kind of educational training, retraining opportunities are going to be critical.
Well, Mayor, let me ask you something. Sure. Some people might make the argument that why should the taxpayers of Tulsa or Kansas City or Johnson County pick up the tab to train workers so that this guy running a multi-billion-dollar operation, making tons of money, allegedly, and again, some people might argue that. I'm not necessarily one of them.
It's all relative.
Why should the cities and the public sector pick up that tab when, at the end of the day, The industries themselves would be perhaps better able to target specific training in-house for the workers that they need. What's the payoff for the citizen?
The payoff is a job in that particular city. If somebody doesn't have a job, they're not a productive citizen. I mean, I don't mean to say anything bad about that individual, but he or she is not able then to contribute to the betterment of the community. If they don't have a job, they can't support their family. They will lose self-esteem, all those things that are not good for not having a job. We have a responsibility, I believe, to look at our citizenry. We have a responsibility to provide them an opportunity for a job, to have some sort of a skill set that when they leave high school, that they at least have the ability to do something, to have some skill set. Presently, today in this country, we're not doing a good job at that. We're failing, in my opinion. Too many of teenagers don't have jobs. The number that do is a minuscule number. The number that are young adults that have a job and a high school education is also a very, very small number. We focus so much on achieving a four-year college degree. We've done it to the detriment and ignoring the need of something else to provide a skill set for that person to have a job, whether it's being an electrician, a machinist, a carpenter, a painter, a welder, software developer, whatever it is, we're not fulfilling that. And we need, as a community, we need to demand that our high schools get involved with beginning that questioning, that opportunity, the option of giving that student, look at something else besides. You don't have to necessarily have a college degree to be a success. You can get a very, very good amount of income, good benefits, good things like that, and more than likely they're going to be being paid a lot more than a traditional four-year college educated student at this point in time.
Tony,
Can I jump?
Yes,
This is an extremely important discussion.
Absolutely.
Extremely important. Mom and Dad want everybody to grow up to be doctors and lawyers and such, right? We never have enough good skilled tradespeople. A good skilled tradesperson with us, with a little bit of overtime, can make $100,000 a year. You can, in the plant, you can easily make $50,000, $60,000. If you're a technician on a vehicle at a dealership, you can make $35,000, $40,000. Those are not bad paying jobs. But the problem is getting individuals excited about math, science, skilled trades, and get them into that pipeline. In Johnson County, they do have the Blue Valley School District has the CAPS program, their Career Advanced Placement Studies, where they're trying to get high school students involved. We're working with them now to try to get an advanced manufacturing component to that so that they can hopefully make a decision whether they have the skill sets to go to college to be an engineer or something like that, or to come in and be a technician, be a skilled tradesperson. We have to get people more interested in going into making things. This is just fundamentally critical because they have to have people that can create new technologies, who can create the new engineering applications. And I'll just finish by saying this. When we go out to hire people and we test them now, right, they have to be tested, over 60% of the employees that come into us, generally speaking, not always, but generally speaking on average, fail our test.
If I could interject something
Sure,
very quickly. There's a study that was done by Harvard called Pathways to Prosperity about 3 years ago that identifies this problem spot on. And it talks about it. Pathways to Prosperity. I would certainly suggest if anybody's interested in this subject, read it. It's perfect.
We have about 3 or 4 questions, and I want to get to them. Yes, sir. State your name if you would, please.
Chris Lawson from the city of Hamilton, from the Cincinnati region, Ohio. For Tony, I'm interested. I was reading Bloomberg and had the CEO of Ford, and it was interesting because he said that he was no longer a car company, he was a technology company. And oftentimes when I hear these politicians talking, they talk about manufacturing almost in this old smokestack thing, but what we're really talking about, I think, is like Ford
before you answer, Tony, did everybody hear that? Is there anybody, just answer if you did not have a hearing so we can decide whether or not we need to repeat it. Anybody who feels like they didn't hear it? Good. Go ahead, Tony, I'm sorry.
I need about an hour to respond to that one.
Yeah, I know.
And I used to be in Ohio, great plant in Sharonville, right? And we used to have one in Batavia. Unfortunately, it didn't make it through the resurgence here. But he's exactly right. I mean, the CEO in our company has decided this is about technology. It's not like it was back in the olden days when I was working on, I could work on my vehicle out underneath the shade tree at my, mom and dad's house, right? There's so much technology in that vehicle, whether it's emissions, whether it's safety, whatever it might be. And even just now the sync, the MP3 players, the My Ford, My Lincoln Touch, those type of things. I mean, the industry is going towards, we're starting to test autonomous driving, right? Autonomous driving, vehicles that will drive themselves. That you'll get in the car, and you'll say, take me home, kick back, relax, and the vehicle will take you home. This is not in the near term, but you're already seeing those technologies going into the vehicles, right? You're seeing on your cruise control now, right? You see the cruise assist where you put it on there and you come up behind a car and it slows you down and keeps a certain distance on the highway. You see the technology where we have vehicle-to-vehicle technology, where you're talking about a vehicle coming at you from a different angle, and that will warn you that you can't see it because it's on the other side of that big truck over here that it's about to come into this intersection. The technology industry, part of our industry, is booming. Again, that couldn't be done without a lot of engineers, a lot of technology, and the workers. To part of your question, we went through the last two negotiations with the UAW, some significant changes in the way we do business. To their credit, they were part of the partnership in terms of healthcare costs, in terms of how we go about, working together on the line, et cetera, et cetera. And that's where it's at. It's a partnership that has to take place, but we are moving the vehicles down the line with technology of all kinds. I mean, even now where you come out to the vehicle and you have stuff, as long as you have your fob in your pocket, and you can have your hands full, you can reach and wave your foot under the back bumper, and the tailgate comes up for you. But we are, actually, there is testing going on right now for autonomous driving that's going to take place sometime in the future. Did I get most of your question?
Yeah, you did.
Or we can talk later. Yeah. I was trying to put a lot of it in really fast.
We've got 5 questions and 20 minutes. Yes, sir.
My name's Mike Buda. I'm from the Federation of Canadian Municipalities. My question is, how important are financial incentives like deferred taxes or direct cash subsidies to private companies to attract a business to relocate? Or is it just sort of an arms race between municipalities which leads to mutually assured destruction, as compared to providing a competitive basket of municipal services and taxes and things like workforce? How important are those two, especially in light of the New York Times article from a couple of weeks ago that was very critical of these types of direct contributions?
Miquela, from an economic development standpoint that deals with incentives, what's your perspective?
I can only purely speak for New York City, but we don't really offer that great of incentives, and we offer some tax assistance for programs and development projects that cross a certain threshold, and those are as of right. So if you are making an investment over $1 million and acquiring a building, making upgrades, buying equipment, you can apply for this program. I would say it's a challenge because other cities perhaps have a little more in their tool chest to play around with, and we really cannot compare on a price point for land costs. I mean, there's no comparison. Jersey will always win out. And so if a business wants to come to New York City, it's because they want to be close to the client base. And for that, we have it. We have that plus so much more because we have over 9 million people come to visit our city on a regular basis annually. So when you start to add up all those things in terms of the customer base, if you're trying to tap into that, it makes sense. And then, you can maybe make do with the real estate costs. The navigating government is something that we've taken to heart, and that's where we feel that we're trying to do a much better job to remain more competitive. And really, the way I look at it is we're trying to see our companies as clients. Too often, government, I think we think of them to be regulated, and that's why a lot of businesses get turned off and they go to the next city that won't regulate them as much. much, or that would add to their cost of doing business. So I'm working very closely with my regulatory agencies to have them approach things slightly differently. We put too much burden on our companies to expect them, if they're running their business, to look up the latest regulatory upgrades that our fire department put out. That means they have to change out their sprinklers. They're running a business. They don't have time to check out the fire department's website, but that's the way we've been operating. So I think more and more cities are becoming more aware of that, and I know New York City, we have making some positive steps. There's obviously more to go, though.
Thank you, Miquela. How about you, Ed?
Well, some of you may be asking, what's a guy from a county doing at a city event? It was my good fortune for 24 years, beginning in the early 80s, to serve as mayor of Overland Park. And for about a 10-year period of time thereafter, we did not offer any incentives to any company locating in the city of Overland Park. We had a very strong K through 12 school system. We had first-class infrastructure to support the community, parks, recreation, all those things. And one of our Kansas companies, very large national company, looked at Overland Park to locate a new campus, a new facility. I remember meeting with those executives and I said, look, we don't offer incentives. They said, we don't want any incentives. We know where we want to be. Well, about 30 days later, I get a call from the Chamber of Commerce Economic Development official, said, hey, we got a problem. I said, what's that? He said, this company has been offered incentives from all over the country to move their corporate headquarters out of Overland Park or out of Kansas. So that started us on a path of judiciously offering investment incentives. In Kansas, it usually relates to property tax abatement. And the state also has some incentives. I think we all wish it were different, but it's not. And those are the cards that we have to play with, those that have been dealt to us. And I think using, those incentives in a rational, judicious manner will continue to be with us. And perhaps there will be some who won't use them in that manner either.
Mayor Bartlett?
I think incentives are a fact of life if you really want to be serious about attracting business to a community or keeping business in a community. Like it or not, it's there. Now, the trick is, it's certainly not, from our standpoint, I assume from everybody else's standpoint, it's not simply giving somebody a check and saying, hey, come in. It's more of a very focused opportunity of providing leases or leasehold or a building, things like this. But most importantly, there must be clawback provisions in the deal to where if they don't perform, then they lose the whole thing, and then they owe a check back or something back like that. That's the important part. It's just not it's not a negotiation that occurs in a vacuum.
Tony, incentives in the case of Ford, major issue.
It depends. It depends on where our operation is at relative to economies of scale, where it's at relative competition, not only against our competitors, but against other plants in our system. And in some cases, it may not be that important. In some cases, like our recent investment here in Kansas City, it meant the world of difference. Not that we had to have the most money we could get anywhere, because actually we had better offers on the table. But we had to get to a certain bogey that we had to level the playing field. And I think that's the key, is whether or not you can level the playing field. Right? A perfect example is our new stamping facility in the city of Liberty. We were struggling to get that done. And I think Mayor Knutson is actually in the crowd somewhere today. And working with the city, we were able to make that work because we had to come up with a certain level of business model to make it work. So it's going to depend on where you're at. I think the important part, though, is to think about whether or not you're leveling the playing field, because the nuclear war, the armament is going on, and everybody's not going to lay down their arms all at once and say, none of us are going to give incentives anymore. The question is whether or not the company's coming to you. We try to take a little bit different approach, open the books up a little more, talk about what it takes, show the local municipalities, show the state what it's going to take for us to be able to compete there, and hopefully we can work together as a partnership, and that's the key. One of the things Alan Mullally has said for a number of years since he met us, we are looking for world-class partners. World-class partners with the union, world-class partners with suppliers, world-class partners in the public sector. And if we do that, we can make a business model work in manufacturing in the United States.
Thank you very much. We have about 13 minutes and 4 or 5 questions. Yes, sir? You're after him, and then we've got 2 over here. Go ahead.
My name's Christopher Ray. I'm about to graduate with a degree in electrical engineering in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. And I'm wondering what I can do or my community can do to bring R&D manufacturing down to us. Because you've mentioned you're looking for engineers, but short of traversing to one of the meccas of new industry and alternative energy, what can we do in South Florida, which is a little behind in the energy?
Okay, it goes to me.
I have some thoughts too. So one of the things we've been trying to really support is hardware startups and thinking about incubators for that. And I think, you know, starting on that level, you can not take a huge investment. It would require some support, but creating a space with low rent or free rent, getting some donations or free equipment, and a lot of innovation will come out of that, I think is one way to take a stab at it. But that's something that in New York City, there's hardware meetups. People are just sharing their knowledge. It's getting a buzz. You start to get some people and invite people who have money, who want to invest in something. It's getting the right people in the room and kind of building that ecosystem. So that's where I would encourage you to start.
I think it takes a cooperative effort between the private sector, public sector, chambers of commerce, city, county officials to develop a plan as to exactly what you want your community to be. Back in the mid-'70s, my community decided we wanted to attract regional headquarters of various companies. We focused on that. We were very successful. I mentioned the Education Research Triangle Tax. The community, I think, made a conscious decision that we wanted to have a presence in the bioscience area and that we wanted to provide job opportunities for members of our community in that broad area. And the 1/8 cent sales tax that supports that, I'm told, is unique. There's nowhere else in the country that has that kind of public support for that kind of industrial opportunity.
Go ahead.
I'll answer quickly. You really have to have a commitment for a variety of opportunities, in my view. The educational requirement, I think, is huge. Every big entrepreneurial activity of an area, Silicon Valley, whatever it might be, it's all centered around an educational institution. What we've done in Tulsa is we've focused on our University of Tulsa is one of the most active in cybersecurity. We in the city have we're in the process of installing a supercomputer in our building, accessible to the private sector and the public sector. Along with that comes an ability to have direct access into a very active investment banking community. All 3 of those things have to come together in one community for it to be successful, in my view.
And just to add, and I agree with everything was said, on top of that, though, you need to create an environment of predictability. Manufacturers like predictability, right? We like to know that because we're going to invest tens of millions, hundreds of millions, or billions of dollars into a product. And then we have to recoup that by selling that in the marketplace afterwards. So you need a place where you know that you're going to have consistency in terms of regulation, consistency in terms of tax base, cost of doing business, those type of things. And that's another piece that, you know, we don't talk about often enough, is creating some kind of predictability, because we invest and then we have X number of years to recoup those costs and make that money back. If the model changes constantly, consistently, you know, through that makes it hard to say, hey, we need to go there to do business.
Yes, ma'am.
To answer Mayor James' question, how can you address the issue of
Thank you very much. I appreciate that question. Yes, sir.
I actually love the conference. 25 years with the Quindale Ruins Underground Railroad, the largest archaeological underground railroad site in North America, 206 acres. But when, it's such a huge, and I'm kind of nervous right now, but this is called City Age, the New American City, and as a veteran, I think that possibly the panel, there's nothing on here about veterans, and so when this takes place in Toronto and in New York, hopefully there'll be a component about the struggling unemployment of veterans. The Huffington Post did the thing year before last, PBS, the National Parks Conservation, about the WPA, Work in Progress Administration, and you're being in the positions that you are. We've been trying to push, even at UMKC, the WPA, and if you're able to respond to why there is such silence in the elected official arena about trying to help the chronically disconnected, unemployed American citizen and veteran. Thank you.
Okay. I'm not sure that we can do that in the context of manufacturing, but I will push back just a little bit and say that it is not as quiet as you think. There are a number of initiatives going on in Kansas City and elsewhere to hire the unemployed veteran or the veteran returning home. But it is, once again, one of those situations where people look to cities to solve every problem. And frankly, it's an impossibility. Cities simply cannot solve every problem. What you should be doing is knocking on the doors of businesses who actually hire people to find out why they're not hiring them. From our perspective as public people, what we do is try to work with our chambers to encourage them to hire and to do other things. Now, perhaps you folks have different approaches.
Don't have a different approach, but I'd say that it's really up to a city official, county official, to give note to the problem to the state and to the feds. In Oklahoma, for example, we were able to make a change in how we categorized a veteran to recognize the training that he or she had, but it wasn't qualified in some manner.
Exactly.
It was silly. Here we have somebody that's trained to do all sorts of things, but they had to go and get retrained to learn a skill they already had. Big waste of money and time. So that was changed. So now they can exit the armed services with their capability and get a job.
You know, I think it's worth remembering what the outcome of the GI Bill was after the Second World War, and not that we need to recreate that same program, but there ought to be those kind of opportunities for returning veterans to learn new skills or advanced education opportunities as those returning veterans did, and it was there was an enormous payback as far as our economy was concerned.
And the GI Bill is still alive and well. It has different permutations, but Mayor Bartlett's 100% correct. This may be about the New American City, but don't forget that veterans, to a large extent, are governed by federal law, and navigating federal law and doing some of the things that are necessary to get past all of that in and of itself requires almost a department in cities to deal with. Yeah. But we do try, and it is a slow process, and this entire country could do a lot better than it's doing.
Let me comment real quick.
Go for it.
We work with a number of national, state. We've been recognized with awards. Our hiring practices are looking to do anything we can in most of those areas. I'm not sure all the areas you talked about, hiring practices. Unfortunately, we can't hire all the returning veterans, all the disabled veterans. And I agree, it's a problem that we all need to be working together on.
Last question, yes. Okay, who wants to talk? That's a fish in the barrel question there.
Well, I'll jump in.
Go for it, Tony.
I'll jump in. I'm not scared. Yes, we have had problems. And in my earlier comment, a large percentage of the individuals that come looking to work with us don't pass a basic competency test, which is basically not much above a high school equivalency test. We have to have them to get to a certain level. Do we provide additional training? Do we provide assistance for education? Do we provide assistance for them, throughout the process? The answer is yes. But that adds cost to the process. We would like to continue to work with the educational community, whether it is basic core skills or it's advanced skills, technical skills, those type of things, to develop more programs that prepare people for the workplace. I'm not against, everything that's out there, but if you're going to get into these settings, there are some skill sets that you have to have, and we're trying to work with everybody we can.
I'm going to take a moderator's prerogative. I see Clyde McQueen over here. Clyde, would you stand for us, please? Clyde is an expert, not just locally, but nationally in workforce development. And let me ask you a couple of questions that might help clarify not just the last question, but the question before. Number one, can you illuminate for us the difficulties that some community colleges have when they receive kids from school districts and how much remedial work they need on things? Number two, can you talk about what's available to provide some of the skills that you're aware of to get people into manufacturing? And can you address the issue of the disabled and the returning veteran? And can you do all of that in 60 seconds?
Yes, sir. Well, let me say three things. First off, our educational system needs to be retooled for the 21st century. The semester-based system, i.e., is based on an agrarian calendar, spring, summer, and fall semesters. Florida doesn't hire in spring, summer, and fall semesters. They hire when they need them. So first, we have to do more just-in-time training. Secondly, is it based on remedial education. The number one recipient of Pell Grant funding, which was talked about earlier, 40% of our Pell Grant funding initially 2 years ago was for remedial education. Didn't even get your certificate. And so recently that was changed. And what has to happen, what Miles have been doing, is combining basic education with training concurrently. Many people do not see the need to get a basic education because they don't see the way to get a good paying job. So you have to combine those two things together. It takes people like Tony and other folks coming into that classroom to show them that there's a real possibility. To many persons, it's not that way. And then third, the other thing that we have to do is to make STEM more attractive at earlier ages of learning. Our challenge as a country is that many students, and I think you talked about earlier, Tony, many parents are focusing on their kids getting into these different universities, and they focus on GPAs. And many students don't take math and chemistry because it's getting a low GPA. So they take these soft courses, and by the time they get to college, they haven't had college algebra. We could not even field, Mayor, IBEW electricians because 4% of the people are not taking algebra in high school because it wasn't a requirement. So we need to redo those educational systems to make them more open to veterans, to make them more easier access, to create the opportunity for students who are now non-traditional, more traditional than ever before.
Thank you, Clyde. I appreciate it. We are out of time, but 30 seconds from each of our panelists to sum up their thoughts and where you think that leave these folks with something that you think is a pertinent takeaway for them based on our subject today.
So, for me, this is an exciting but critical time, as already echoed by some of the comments and questions and the panelists. Right now is the time to invest in our education to, in terms of manufacturing, open the doors. So often our companies are not, folks are not aware what's in their backyard. So finding ways that the general public, getting kids to visit these companies, to get excited, to bring some of the making inside the classroom is one way to move forward.
I think it's incumbent upon communities to broaden their scope, broaden their understanding of what manufacturing is. In today's technology-filled world, if I were to say something to my 13-year-old grandson about becoming involved in manufacturing, he wouldn't know what I was talking about. So I think it's important that we broaden the perspective, that we educate to that broader perspective and gain a greater community understanding as to what the new manufacturing opportunities really are.
I've had the good fortune of traveling the last couple of years in several cities in Taiwan, Japan, many cities in Europe for economic development seeking purposes. We should be, as a country, scared to death of what's about to hit us if we don't react in the same way. We have to demand, stand up, scream, yell, and demand that our educational institutions collaborate and give us an opportunity to provide not just a four-year college degree to our students, but the ability to work with their hands and to applaud that effort and to make certain that that is something that is very socially acceptable and desirable, because there are a lot of people, there's millions of people in this country today that have been ignored, that have fallen by the wayside, and they don't have the skill set to do much of anything at this point, and we can't allow that to happen anymore.
Tony?
One of the best ways to fix a lot of our societal problems is to find people good jobs, whether you're veterans or you're disabled or inner city or whatever it might be. One of the better ways to create wealth is manufacturing, construction, agriculture, agribusiness. The idea that we need to have people in our society that make things, I believe, is a fundamental part of what we need to do. Yep. If we do that, we can create the middle class. That's what made the middle class. If we don't, we run the risk of losing the middle class. The middle class are the ones that can afford to come to this venue for opportunities here. They can also then afford to go to the Chiefs game and the Royals game, other types of things. We need to try to protect the middle class, have them still be a part of our society. To do that, we need to get the education system right. We need to move ourselves forward and learn how to make things again.
Thank you all very much for listening, and please join me in thanking our panelists. Thank you.